but it looks good now. Looks like it'll be no problem to set up, so I'll pop that to one side. Let's get the body ready for the rangefinder to go on it. The first thing I need here is this mask. It's a little bit bent out. Put that back a bit. That's better. And on there we need the arm for setting the frame counter, and that's held in place with this stud here. That's the screw that was a little bit mutilated looking, for no apparent reason. A spring needs to go on here to return this. I'm going to get this spring around the right way. Now I've got that on back to front. An ejet. That's it. Now I just need to put the rangefinder in position. I'll just take our rangefinder, quick wipe of molybdenum paste on that cam surface of that lever, a couple of drops of lacquer on the base where this mounts to the top of the body casting, and that's to make sure that it doesn't shift if the camera gets dropped. Put it in position and fit its two retaining screws, which just get dropped in from the top, and in an ideal world they drop straight into the hole below. Just like that. Can we do two of two? I can see that this screw's got some retaining paste on there, Loctite or something of a similar nature. But it's not really the screw you need to retain. It's the rangefinder body. Well, there's my rangefinder in position. Now I need to check how accurate that is. I'll just have a quick look out the window. And it's returned, yeah, it certainly needs adjustment. So, horizontal adjustment, that's the lock screw there. Just loosen that slightly. Here's the adjusting screw. Swing that in slightly. Wants just a little bit more. And that appears to be just about bang on there. So I'll lock that adjustment up and check the close focus adjustment. I'll be back shortly. Well, the close focus adjustment is bang on the money too, so that's good. That's all I need to do. Now I need to clean up my top housing. So to clean the top housing, I'm going to remove the shoe first. The chrome plating doesn't look particularly good here. There's all sorts of marks. I'm not sure they're going to come out. They look like corrosion, to tell the truth. They don't. Corrosion doesn't wipe off chrome, it tends to wipe off with chrome. So most likely there'll be pits in the chrome once that's cleaned up. But at least it'll be clean. Let's start. Put a bit of naphtha on a cotton bud and see what filth comes off here. Well, most of that is just dirt and it's come off. That's good, that's much better than I expected. This is a pit of corrosion here and here and here, and this stuff too most likely. Certainly it'll be improved in its appearance, but it's never going to look flawless. Yeah, a lot of that stuff's coming off. And at this end certainly looks worse. And it's probably worse because it's harder to get at these surfaces because of the lack of space between the advance knob and so forth, which means that dust and other filth is allowed to gather and stay there for decades. And dust and so forth acts as a great reservoir for holding moisture. And moisture, of course, promotes corrosion. I must say this is cleaning up much better than I expected. I thought this one was going to be fairly ugly. Like the finish on a lot of cameras of the age, the surface is a satin chrome finish. Now I don't know much about electroplating, so I don't know exactly how they achieved that. I suspect that the metal top was etched in some fashion prior to the chroming, which gave it a satin finish, and then the chrome just took that finish. If there's someone out there who knows a lot about chroming, they'll be able to comment on how satin chrome is achieved. Certainly an attractive finish, but it's a little bit delicate, which may be inherent in the fact that it's satin finish, or it may just be a reflection of the fact that it's only a very thin layer of chrome. I don't know. Well, that top cover's cleaned up very well. I'm pleased about that. So I'll clean up the shoe and then that can go back in place. Now, because this camera is not synced for flash, it means that no one has been forcing a flash into the shoe very often. Oh, they have once. I can see a scribe mark just down here. That is typically seen where someone has slid a hot shoe flash into one of these flash shoes, and the contact in the middle of the hot shoe on an electronic flash makes a mark in the chrome. So I wonder what was happening there. I wonder whether someone put their flash on the camera and then discovered that there was actually no connection, and there was no way of making their flash fire apart from manually. Because you can always do that. If you can hold your camera steady enough on a slow shutter speed in the dark, you can just fire the flash off manually. But it's a challenge when the ambient light's a bit higher, I can tell you. We got caught like that at the Millennium celebrations. We're out with another family celebrating, and at midnight I was taking all the photos and or attempting to take photos, and the flash wouldn't go off. And it turns out that the flash lead was broken. So I had to release the fire of the flash with the test button as I released the shutter on the camera. Oh, they came out interesting. You could certainly see who was there. Not my finest photography. Right, I'll clean this glass, put this together. Time to get this top cover in place. I've already shown you once, but you weren't watching because the camera wasn't switched on. Alright, cock the shutter. Roll the sprocket to get this mechanism locked ready to go. Get my top cover there hooked up so that the rewind shaft comes through the hole. Move my top over into place. Check that the frame counter moves. It does. And that's it. I can put my two screws in place. And I need to tighten the bush on the top of the film advance and then fit the advance knob. So I'll find the right pliers. So I need to fit the spanner to the film advance shaft in here to stop it turning. This is left hand threaded, of course, isn't it? Just do that, push up. That's it. Film advance knob can go on the top. Put the spanner on the top there again. Just do that up tight. It only needs to be done up finger tight. You don't need to go crazy. You never want to have to put a spanner on a knob like that because you'll just damage the chrome and make a real mess of it. The shutter release button can go on the top. These buttons are quite commonly missing. Of course, there's no spares unless you're exceptionally lucky and you find an organ donor which is otherwise so ugly it's useless that you can steal one from. I'll do that up tight in a second. when I find what I'm looking for. These pliers will do it for me. It's good. That button's already a little bit rough from whoever had a go at it on a previous occasion. That'll do nicely. The rewind knob. Just put something through the fork of the rewind. Do that up. Again, finger tight is all that's required. There's the top of the camera dealt with. But at the bottom of the camera, I haven't put the leather back on there yet. So that's what I've got to do. I've got it stripped and cleaned and ready to go. But I just need to apply the adhesive and get this in place. It's better practice to apply the adhesive to a piece of paper and then transfer it from the piece of paper to the leather using a toothpick so that you get exactly as much as you need where you want it and nowhere else. But I'm taking liberties because I've done it 1,000 times before, and I've got a pretty fair idea of exactly how much I can get away with. That looks pretty good. One thing you can do is where the leather runs over this button for the release catch at the bottom, you run around that with your grease. That'll stop any tendency of the glue on the edge of the leather sticking at that point and causing you problems. That leather just goes onto the base of the camera. I'll zoom out a bit. And because we've had the leather off in one piece, it goes back down nice and flat. If you just peel a piece of leather back, because perhaps you needed to get to a fixing screw at this point, you'll end up with a crease across there where you put it back again, which would be a bother and a nuisance. So, the depth of field scale. Let's get this together. The wavy washer, I'll give a very light wipe of synthetic grease to that. Pop that in place. The central part, I'll just put a smear of grease around that so that the moving ring will revolve smoothly. Then we've got 2 screws. And I've chosen to put the depth of field scale on first before I put the ring at this end on, because the depth of field scale will only go on in one direction. And by doing it this way, it reminds me which way up the writing is supposed to be when I put this piece on, which says Made in Germany. And it would be disconcerting if the writing here was upside down relative to this piece. This is just the surround for the tripod socket. And the surround really just gives the camera a broader surface to bear on the top of the tripod, so it's less likely to be wobbly. You could have done a better job than that. But there it is. I want to put a bit of wax polish on the leather, but otherwise the camera is serviced and ready to go home. It's quite a nice example of the Retina 011. The shutter hasn't been buggered around with. A lot of them have had flash sync added at a later date. Its faults and shortcomings here, well, it's corrosion. There are corrosion marks on the top cover, corrosion marks on the advance knob and the rewind knob. Almost certainly salt water damage. It may have been that somebody was just handling the camera with wet hands at the beach, but it's something of that nature. Not at all uncommon, of course, but you could go crazy trying to make a camera like this look perfect, because as soon as you replace one part that's a little bit slightly tatty, something else catches your eye, and before you know it, it's a completely different camera. So I'll clean up this leather and come back. Well, here's the finished camera. I think it looks pretty good, and I'm sure the owner should be pleased with this. I'm sure it'll take some nice photos, and yeah, it's a good example. I'd be pleased to own it. Thanks for watching.